This was one of Castro's personal guards. This guy had, immensely trained. This guy had been making a plan for months on how to get out of this airplane or how to get this airplane on the ground and how to figure out how to get away. He takes his glasses off. He is chained at this point. And he takes his right glass and breaks it. And he takes it and slits the throat of the guy that's sitting in the back with him. We get to a point where we're now in firing range, and we start doing some commands, and he turns around and he starts doing this chant in Spanish. Then we could see he's pumping himself up. He knows he's trapped. He knows, I have gone to the end of my end. This is it. I'm either going to kill them or they're going to kill me, and this is where we're going to be in life. And I worked those riots for 26 days. And I have never seen chaos in the streets like that. But watching downtown burn and watching those mobs just let loose on our downtown, and we were the only thing from between them than taking over the entire downtown. And people don't understand that. You always try to touch something, a legacy. In high school, I left behind FCA, Fellowship Christian Athletes. I started it in college, started our fraternity. And you think about there's a legacy you left behind. ATO is going to be one of those legacies. If everyone was like, who would you idolize if you was a president that was out there? I said Ronald Reagan. But the biggest thing is the conservative values that go through my blood are the same type of values.
You're listening to the ATO Bridging the Divide podcast, brought to you by the Assist the Officer Foundation. Since 1999, the ATO has given assistance to the first responder community, and now we want to give a platform to hear their incredible stories. We also want to hear the stories of the many people that support us. Our community is small, but it is strong. We have differences. We don't always agree. And we all make mistakes. But together we can grow, we can heal, and we can learn from those mistakes. And together we can bridge the divide.
All right, welcome back once again to the ATO's Bridging the Divide podcast. My name is Randy, and we're gonna do things a little bit different today. The crew's changed up. Joe King is here once again, as always, and we have a special guest host, Chris Webb. And I'm very excited to introduce our next guest. He's a fellow San Antonian, GSG. His parents and my dad went to the same high school, Go Cowboys. We grew up miles apart, and we didn't meet until I got out of the academy and went to Southwest Patrols almost 25 years ago, and he's been a great friend for 25 years. He's the reason I got involved with the DPA back in about 2007. I sat in my first PAC meeting because of him. He's one of the toughest, most resilient, busiest men that I've had the privilege to call a friend. One Halloween, I dressed up as his social media account, and that was a lot of fun. He's a dedicated family man and his beautiful family, his wife Tracy, daughter Peyton, Cameron, and his youngest son Gunnar. He's currently assigned to the Intel unit and the U.S. Marshal Fugitive Task Force. He's a VP for the Dallas Police Association. He's vice chair of the ATO. He's the DPA PAC chairman, and he's a councilman for the city of McKinney. He's a man of many hats, and I'm sure I missed one of his hats, but it's my honor to introduce Frederick Frazier.
Is there supposed to be a crowd noise going?
Yeah, well, that's what we're making it right now.
I was wondering.
We'll edit that in.
Yeah. Well, I always think of the what's that movie? With the shock jock.
Robin Williams, the Hello Vietnam, Good Morning Vietnam.
No, the shot jock.
Oh, Howard Stern.
Howard Stern,
yeah,
in the movie.
When
we can't even get Howard Stern out of here.
Yeah.
And when he always did the intro, and Robin would do all the sound. Fred would do the sound. Robin would be in the background making. So that it was
You're
always.
aging yourself.
The movie still was really good.
Frederick, thank you for being on with us. We've been trying to get you in here for weeks. You're kind of a hard guy to get locked down. We're going to go ahead and dive right into it if you're ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
So you grew up in San Antonio. What made you apply with DPD? What drew you here?
Well, it's a funny story. So one of my neighbors is Dean Hable. He's the president. Sorry, he's the chief of police over in Anna, Texas. He was walked by our fraternity table at UTSA and said, "Hey man, you know that Dallas is going to be in town tomorrow?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And he's like, "Yeah, they're going to be over here at this at SAC, and they're going to be doing interviews. They're going to start taking applications. They're hiring." And at that time, San Antonio was on a hiring freeze, so we were both kind of waiting on the San Antonio spots to unfreeze and them to start hiring again. But it didn't look like it was going to come anytime soon. So I go meet Dean over there. I end up meeting who's now Chief Reyes, who signs me up, and then we start from there. Dean never shows, and I find out the next day. I'm like, "Hey, where were you? I thought we were going to go over there and meet together." This is before cell phones, No one had. You had to go find a payphone. You want to call each other,
Paging people,
or page somebody, right? And so no, we had pagers because I had a pager. I was like a walking dope dealer, and so and he goes, "Man, I didn't go because they have the eye exam. I would have failed the eye exam." And I said, they didn't have an eye exam. And still to this day, one of the smartest individuals I know on this planet, we talk about the eye exam that didn't exist.
Well,
And he would have been a Dallas police officer.
I think it worked out. I think it worked out pretty well for him.
Yeah. And Dean went on to Farmers Branch, who hired him right off the box, and he became a chief over there. He worked his way up, and I know this is not about Dean, but it's somebody I admire, somebody I look up as a mentor, and he's now the chief of police over at Anna, and he's got his own crew to run, and he's doing a great job. I know Nate Pike is the mayor there. He's a dear friend of mine, and Nate said they couldn't have hired a better person. So anyway, that's how I ended up with getting to Dallas in the short ray.
So during the academy class, what are some of your classmates that ended up being lifelong friends?
Yeah, what are they doing right now?
Yeah. So
what would they turn out to be?
You talk about like Tracy and Mata and
who are they?
Ruben. So Ruben's obviously a chief. Mata's the president of the DPA. I got him involved with the DPA because of Mata's own style of leadership, and plus he was working at the academy at the time. And I went out there at the academy just for a training. That's when we did the training cycles. Were at the academy. Our in-service was there, and I watched how he was with the recruits, and how he made them feel like that everything was going to be perfect. He made them feel like because you know how it is when you're in your academy. How many people were in your class that were from Dallas? Hardly any, right? There's hardly any. And so, but he made them feel at home. And I knew that same style leadership that Mike had at the academy, that he could bring it over here to the Dallas Police Association, was dearly needing that type of leadership. And he did. And he's been a great friend from the day one at the academy. He's been a dear friend working here at the DPA. And everyone on the inside knows that it was probably me being more groomed to be the president for the DPA than Michael was. But when you see Mike and you see what he brings to the table, there's folks like me that have to recognize talent. And recognizing that talent right off the box knows that talent needs to come before you, and I would be a better second man than a first man, if that makes any sense. And so we've been tied to the hip since we've been doing the DPA stuff together, because that is the person I would do anything for that man, and I think he'd do the same for me. But he's been a better president for this association, and he broke a cycle that we needed to break for a long time.
Perfect.
What academy class was that?
248.
248.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good.
Y'all's class sounds a little bit more better than what 252 turned out to be.
I don't know. 252 was good. You got to remember, 2 classes before that was like Kurt Hibbets and Preston Browning, and that whole crew was 246. That was the class I was supposed to be in. And when they called me, I was right in the middle of my semester at UTSA, and I can't remember the recruiter's name, but he called and he said, "You'll never ever get this chance again." And I said, "Okay," and we just hung up.
Well, you know what I remember? Ruben quit school in the middle of, because when y'all started, he quit because we had a class together. So he quit in the middle of I couldn't believe he was doing that, but he didn't take that chance you did.
Yeah, I took the chance, and they called back in December, said if you could be here in December. I was like, perfect, I'll be done by then. And so I took the chance, and they called me back. It's funny, is when I was in the academy class, I got called by Austin, to come because my application had gone through and everything had finalized there, and I decided not to go take that chance. And then looking back at it now, and then I had a chance to go to San Antonio. I didn't take that. I ended up doing their physical fitness, took their exam. I ended up number 1 on their list, and they finished my background. And at that time, the economy was doing so gangbusters up here, and Tracy's work was going gangbusters. Everything was perfect for us here. We didn't see a reason why we would start all over again and going back to San Antonio. And so looking back at it now, we made one of the most fantastic, God and everything just aligned everything for us. And it just put us in a place that we needed to be. So it's life, that moves on.
That was a win for us. Lost for them, right. But definitely a win for us. All right, so you get out of the academy, you go to Southwest. Talk about working small groups like 40/40s. What stands out? What stands out? Because you've always been a part of smaller groups.
Yep.
Small teams. What stood out about Southwest and 40/40s for you?
Yeah, that's a great scenario because first of all, I gotta talk about the first day on the job on days, and I'm riding with Dan Marino, who's the whammy, right? And so everyone thinks of Dan Marino, the guy that sells the isotoner gloves. So this is not that guy.
Not that guy.
So this is a 5'4" Hispanic roly-poly guy that laughs and all he wants to do is chase stolen cars. He lived the first day we're in the car and he's telling me how many car chases he's been in the last month. I don't remember the number, but I remember he's like, "Can you run? You look like Superman." And I'm like, "I can run." And you're coming out of the academy, you're fast. I've been playing rugby my entire college, life. I was very fit, and he's not, but he had a fast car, and he was a great driver.
It's like that movie Twins with
Schwarzenegger
and DeVito.
Yeah. And so this. I just got to tell this story before we get in the 40/40s because this story was like a life-changing story, and I've told it to lots of groups across the country. This is when we used to chase cars. And we used to do real police work. The streets were ours. And there's a car chase. We're not even close to it, but we get in it, and now we're like second or third car. And we're going over there by Arpage Circle and all that area off of Polk, and we are flying. And the bad guys, and they're in a stolen car. You know how it goes. They go to those apartments, and they're trying to get over there and bail out of that car and get out. Well, Air One's over us at the time, and he is running low, and he had already passed us once, and this is when our helicopter pilots were out of Vietnam. They had flown in places where choppers weren't supposed to fly, and they had flown choppers that weren't supposed to fly. So they're flying that bell, and that goes by us, and then it comes by us, and those guys bail out of that car, and I'll never forget this, but I had a G-Shock watch on my left wrist, and I caught it on the door when I was coming out, and it tore it right off. But when it fell, I'm like, "Oh my God, my watch!" And Marino is screaming, "Get them!" and I start to go, and the helicopter goes by us again, lower, and he turns it on the side, and he puts the fan blades down to try to scare those guys for trying to get to the woods back there. And all I see is this giant helicopter that looks to me going to crash into these apartments. And all I see is these 3 guys that have stole this car sliding on the ground thinking they're going to be chopped by the helicopter. And that we end up getting them the helicopter. And that's when the helicopter used to have that old siren on the bottom of it. And he would go by and go, woo, woo, woo. And it sounded like it was doing a crank machine underneath of it. And so that was my first day on the job, and I thought, this is the best job in the whole wide world.
For the first day.
And then days are good and days are bad. But shortly after that, there was an opening in the 40/40s, which is a small group, uniform deployment group. Folks don't understand what uniform deployment means. It means you're a police officer in a squad car in uniform, but you're working complaints. And that complaint could be car wash selling drugs. Complaint could be a home selling drugs. It could be an ice cream vendor selling drugs. It could be anything that it's causing some type of drug disturbance, or sometimes robberies. We did the robberies in the driveways, especially off Keese Road. And so we would be assigned to work those, and we work third watch. So third watch means you're working 3 to 11, and you're working into those evening hours where the call load's really the heaviest. And so I got sent over to 4040s. I think it had been on like about 6 months at the time. It wasn't long. And I stayed there for a long time, 7 years. I promoted during that process before 4 years, and then had to go train for a little bit, and then got put back in the 4040s. And then before I left that, but that unit had, well, you asked, Webb was in that unit, so he's there, and that was some of the best officers on this planet to this day, and that are still working on this department, whether they were in the 3080s or 4040s, and I can't remember what the Northwest crew was called, but the Sayers and all those guys that came out of that group, Pat Simpson.
I miss Pat.
Pat's back. He's in Fort Worth. So we need to look him up, but he's back in Texas. So anyway, that's part of the. I mean, I got story after story of the 4040s, but I know Chris has probably got something to say.
No. Well, I mean, that's truly where I learned that. I was very lucky to come in on y'all's heels, and y'all were already established. And you talk about learning how to do real police work. That's where it's back to the Baines is kicking over rocks. We were kicking over a lot of rocks, hiding in bushes. I mean, and it was bottom line, it was fun. Oh, fun. I mean, we had fun, and it was what you dreamed of, cops and robbers. You know, it was a blast. And so I know that a couple years later, you rolled up to Northeast. There was a group of us from Southwest that rolled up to Northeast, and we did the same thing at Northeast in the 2080s. That's what I think those were the numbers.
2080s or 2090s?
2090s. I don't remember. 2090s. I got 2092. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Same thing. I'll real quick story. Helping out narcotics, looking for a Harley Davidson F-150. And Kurt Hibbets was Frederick's wheelman. Like, Kurt's the driver, right? But Kurt was
You got to remember, Kurt just came, before he was in the academy, and he was in college, he was racing motocross.
Yeah.
And so if you've ever want to drive with somebody that can drive, you get in a car with a motocross rider, because there is no such thing as a corner because it becomes a hard break in the turn. There's no corner. And so you go up to a hard break and turn. And so when I got in the car with him the first time, I was like, holy shit, this guy can drive. And he was like, yeah, I rode motocross. And I'm like...
And mini trucks.
And mini trucks. He did have a mini truck. And a lot of different cars throughout the years. But that man, still to this day, has scared everybody who's ever ridden with him on his driving. And he has the cleanest, sharpest cars that have no dings, dents, anything, and armor all everything. But that man can drive the wheels off anything.
I've known him for 20 years. I've never heard that. That's awesome.
Well, see, so some of it rubbed off because I'm a passenger in his car, and we end up getting in a car chase for narcotics with this Harley Davidson F-150, and this dude, that thing was flying, and it was up at Northeast, and we launched in an intersection. It was in a neighborhood, and there was a dip, and I remember there was a Honda coming the opposite direction, and we watched the truck go airborne, and we were in a Caprice, and I just thought to myself, oh no. And we got airborne. I remember looking over, and I could see the lady looking up at us as we flew by. And we hit the ground. Of course, the radiator got pushed up into the car. And the reason why we caught the guy is the guy saw kids walking home from school, and he realized what he was doing, and he stopped. And I was about to go jump up there and rip him through the vent window. Well, there's not a vent window. Yeah. And this guy says, hey, remember, he's supposed to have a gun. And I was like, oh, yeah. This could be dangerous. This could be dangerous. Yeah. Okay, so you're up there, you're doing that. And then that led to the next step in your career. Tell us about
the Marshal Service.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, and I'm drawing a blank on the chief that was who was the chief? Turnage. What was his first name?
William Turnage.
Bill Turnage. So Bill calls me in his office and says, "Hey," and he had two radios next to each other. And he said, "Man." And I'll tell you, there's a story of how you get in front of people like Mr. Turnage. And he passed away 2 years ago, and a great man. And so, then Rookie of the Year, he was everything on this department, right? He was a true legend of this department. We were doing a citywide audit of what departments do we not need, where to cut the fat on the department. And so our sergeant at the time didn't want to do it. And he was like, let Frederick go do it. I don't want to do it. And so I went and did it. And guess who was leading it? David Brown. So the Chief Brown, but he's not chief at that time. He's a lieutenant. And so that's how him and I met. And so we do the audit of the departments, of every piece of the department, what the department needed, what it didn't. And the one piece they were looking at was getting rid of was the deployment units. They wanted to get rid of these deployment units because they saw a lot of fat there. They saw, well, there's groups of guys in each one of these stations that are sitting around doing nothing. Well, they had no idea about how far off they were. So we went and pulled the stats from each one of the groups for the entire city. Well, they were responsible for almost 80% of the arrest totals for the city. It was so high in areas like Southeast and Northwest that were doing all the work. They were doing all the rest work. And the patrol officers were doing what they're supposed to do: answer the calls, get the calls, and they do arrest too. But these units were heavily making the arrest for all the departments, all the burglaries, all the stuff that was happening were happening out of these backroom units. And so we present the case, and that's how the deployment unit stayed intact, because we presented it. So anyway, so I do that, and I think that thing took about 3 to 6 months. I can't remember exactly, but it was a long period, and we met every week. And trust me, it was not a setting I wanted to be in, but no one wanted to do it, and so I did it. So that goes back to me doing that favor for Chief Turnage, and I come in his office. He's got the 2 radios there, and he's like, you're about to get an opportunity that you just don't even think about coming back here. He goes, you and Kurt go over there and do what you and Kurt do. And he's like, put people in jail. And he goes, you get to chase people, and they're going to give you a badge to chase them all over the world. And he couldn't have been any more true when he said that, because right after that, Kurt and I flew to Boston, worked a case. And I know Kurt went to Long Beach working a case. We worked cases all over the country. And we were one of a kind, because the unit had just been built. It was one of the early units, one of the early units in Texas, and they didn't have when a collateral came in from a different state or where it was coming from, we worked it. And then if we had somebody that went somewhere, we went and got them. Now the Marshal Service is built to where everybody has a sister city or something that they work off of, and we share the information now, and you don't have to travel, which is good. It streamlines the whole situation. But we were on ground floor, ground one. We helped, I know, with Todd Thomason, Lieutenant Thompson, who's now in Port Aransas. Great man. He built that fusion unit. He never gets enough credit for it. But he came over and visited with us on how we got information and how we figured out where somebody was at. And so in the early days, we did it the old way. We went through the computer. We went through old bills. We did a lot of interviews, lots and lots of interviews on the ground. These days, we do it more through social media. I'm not going to give away all of our tips, but every thug in the world is on social media. Mm-hmm. And every criminal that loves to flash a gun and show his dope is on social media. And sometimes he puts the address right behind him. So they love watching First 48 and being on TV, and they love Instagram just as much. So
explain to people, because it's common knowledge to us, but explain to them that you're a Dallas officer, but
yes,
you're also...
Yeah, that's the thing that everyone's like, was he a U.S. Marshal? Is he a Dallas? What is he? Is he retired? I had to put something on social media today that I'm not retired, and because and we'll get back into that because of my political stuff that I do, but I'm a Dallas officer assigned to the U.S. Marshals, so they are the agency that we get the cases get adopted from the Marshal Service, and the cases can get adopted from anywhere. It doesn't matter. It can be from Dallas, but it could be from Garland, Mesquite. It could be from Laredo. It doesn't matter where it gets adopted from. But if they think the person's here, it gets adopted, and then we work the case. And it's only fugitive cases, or we work, like this morning, we work with ICAC, and then we did a child pornography case this morning, and it just so happened the guy was a legal alien and had 2 illegal reentries. So you never know what you're going to stumble on when you're out on one of those cases, but that's what my day-to-day job is, working for the U.S. Marshals as a task force officer, as assigned from the Dallas Police Department from intelligence.
Is there a case that you worked on in that service that stands out? Some investigation, like something that stands out that stuck with you?
Yeah, there's a case, and And this is some years back, and it was a tough case because I didn't get in on it on the ground floor. I have, like all my teammates will say, and I know Chris will say it, and Randy say it. He is the luckiest person in the whole world. And there's two days that I'm adopted. That's a lucky day for me in my life right there. And I met my wife, and that's I've won the lottery twice already. And I've won it twice already, and every other day is just a great day. But I'll tell you, we got a case. There was a individual that was being transported from here to Nevada, from Florida from Miami to Nevada, and he was being transported because he was getting ready to go get his second life sentence. Because what he was doing was driving, he was a truck driver, but they were in a moving company. And I don't think he was a truck driver, but he was part of the moving company, and they were doing relocates. And so when her family would relocate, they would take all their stuff, their stuff where they were moving from, and put it in the home. What he would do is figure out the husband wasn't around, the schedule was what the schedule was, and he would break into that home and brutally rape the wife. Or the female that was there, brutally. Leaving these women barely alive, tying them up. And I know he had like 30-something cases pending. And the reason I know that is because I talked to the detective, and then I'll go back to the beginning of the story, but I talked to the detective in Nevada that was working the case, and she started crying, telling me that the women that she'd been working these cases on, and they wanted just justice. They didn't have a death penalty, and there wasn't a death penalty in Florida, so he didn't kill anybody, but he had pretty damn close to killing these people. So anyway, so they're transporting him from Florida to Nevada. This guy had been making a plan for months on how to get out of this airplane, and or how to get this airplane on the ground, and how to figure out how to get away. He had already torn one of his testicles off in his cell, and he had wrote Del Diablo on the wall, and he had been, and then after that they had done surgery to him, fixed him up, and then he's just started working out like they'd never seen. They said he'd run the jail yard and doing push-ups, pull-ups. They were like he was preparing himself, and so the testicle part is like I think a mindset. And what it did is it got him into the infirmary for a while, and that's where they think that he had ended up getting a key, and he had put it on his person very well somewhere. So he causes a disturbance on the plane. They do an emergency landing here in DFW. There's 2 transport agents with him, both of them Miami-Dade PD people. They get, they're like, okay, the airlines are like, we are not putting this guy back on a plane. You're driving him the rest. Well, they're like, well, we can't drive him with 2. We need at least 2 more people on this transport. So they call back home to get 2 people to fly. They go rented a minivan, and they go park it, and they're waiting in the Walmart parking lot over in Grapevine. Well, this guy had just been waiting. And I guess somebody should have done more of a background check on him. I don't know if they knew, but they said they didn't. But this was one of Castro's personal guards. This guy had not only been trained, this guy had been immensely trained in Cuba. And so he takes his glasses off. He is chained at this point. He takes his glasses off, and he takes his right glass and breaks it. And he takes it and slits the throat of the guy that's sitting in the back with him. Takes that piece and takes it into his kidney and rips it straight up. This point, he is completely unshackled. They had no idea that he had a key, and he had unshackled himself. So the video shows him running across the parking lot at an Olympic-like speed in Grapevine, Texas. Well, I'm in Austin working, and I can't remember which session that was, but it's some years back, and I was working there, and I'd usually go from like a Monday to a Thursday or Friday, however it went, right? And I'm hearing all the stuff that's happening here. I'm like, oh, well, they'll have him in custody shortly. Well, days go by. I come back home. All the teams are exhausted. The Miami just sent a new fresh team in to come in to help with the manhunt, And they figured he was still here because he had no relations to anybody here. He had no relations really to anybody in America. So then I get the phone call, and I get it from Vicki Simmons. And Vicki's like, hey, where are you? And I could hear like music in the background, and she's taking these guys to go eat. They've been all working for a week. So they're all having a cocktail. And so they're all somewhere doing something. And I said, what's up? And she's like, there's been a burglary over by the lake, Grapevine Lake, and they need somebody to come by and check it out. And I'm like, okay, I was like, I sent everybody home. These are exhausted, but I'm doing this. I'm like, okay, I'll run over there. Well, I get in the car. I'm like, ugh. Get in the car. I'm running 100 miles an hour. And I'm thinking the whole time, I'm like, man, this could be him. This could be him. So I get there, and they've got the street blocked off, not like a normal burglary. Normal burglary, you'd have a squad in the driveway or out front, no lights on, just be sitting there with like a directional on. Well, I get there, the street's blocked off, the next street's blocked off, the end of the street's blocked off, squad's in front, and then I see a helicopter swing by. And I know it's not ours. It's probably DPS's or Tarrant County. Somebody's over there. And I walk in, talking to the homeowner standing in the kitchen. Beautiful home. I mean, just a gorgeous, big, U-shaped ranch-style home. Gorgeous, right by the lake. And I'm like, what's the deal? And they're like, well, somebody broke in our bedroom. But they must have slept in our bed, because go look at it. So I go to the bedroom, and it's off the porch by the pool. And I go in there, and I see the doors kicked in, and the bed is filthy. I mean, absolutely felt like a dog got in it that was in the mud and just rolled around. And I'm like, what's missing? They're like, a pistol and some clothes. Oh, shit. And I'm like, what kind of clothes? Like heavy. And this is February, and it's like 32 degrees. And I'm like, oh my God, this has got to be him. And so I go back to the living room where the guy's got his lapel mic on. And I said, can you talk to that helicopter? And he's like, yeah. And I said, can you put it on his channel? So he puts it on a channel, they get it. It's DPS's helicopter. I said, do you have a FLIR on that helicopter? And a FLIR is it's a heat seeker. So it looks for the body temperature. And remember, this is the winter. We're going to have we're going to have a really good look at some foliage. Yes, no foliage.
Predator view.
Yeah. And so, so I talked to the homeowners, and I said, if somebody broke into your house, like we think they did, and they wanted to go run out, and not a car's going to pick them up, where would they go? And he was like, oh man, if you go out over our back fence and you go that way, and he's pointing towards the lake, which I don't know, because I'm new to the area. It's not my area. He's like, if you go that way, that's to the lake, and that goes to there's a horse deal over there, and then there's a boat slips and some stuff. And so I tell the helicopter, I said, could you swing over? It looks like it's going to the northwest. If you could swing over there and start running that FLIR in there, and don't use your light. So he does, and within like 3 minutes, he's like, hey, do you guys have a guy out here in the woods, walking the woods? And we're like, and I'm asking, well, I'm like, I don't know. I actually don't know if we do or not. We don't, but I don't know if Grapevine does. So they get on the radio, do we have anybody in the woods? And they're like, nope, we're all sitting here on these corners. And then he goes, oh, he's running. This guy's running. And I'm like, so I run out the front door. I'm like, that's him. Well, I soon realized I don't have a radio to talk to that helicopter. Who the hell am I going to talk to other than just looking at the helicopter and chasing it? And so Kurt's pulling up, and I'm like, hey, I get my vest out of my car, jump in his. I said, go to that squad car at the end. So Kurt runs down to the squad car. We tell him, it's like, go with us, because we can't talk to him. So we get him to go with us. We had no idea this poor guy had been in a shooting the week before and was on desk duty, and we had no idea it was what we were about to put this poor guy through. And so we get out of the car, and I'm like, you just stay with us. We're going to run. And we just need you to turn that mic up, that lapel mic up, so we can hear that helicopter. So that helicopter he's running the guy down, and we get out there, and we're way in the woods now. We're way in the woods. And it's cold and it's dark, and and you're going through a terrain that you don't know, and so we come up. The helicopter's doing, how the helicopters don't hover. Our police helicopters circle, and he's behind this giant oak tree. He goes, you guys should be, y'all are about 50 yards from him. So we get up and we get closer, and that helicopter's going around a big old circle, and this is a huge oak, beautiful oak tree, and it's got like where he's at between us goes uphill. But he'd come downhill and come back uphill to us. And so we get to a point where we're now in firing range. We know that we're in a lethal range if he can fire at us. And we start doing some commands, and he turns around and he starts doing this chant in Spanish. And I can talk about this now. It's gone through the grand jury and everything else. He starts doing this Spanish chants. We can't understand to this day. I still have no. And all I remember is that he had his hands down in his waistband. And he's got his head behind the tree looking at us, and we can hear the helicopter saying, "Hey, his hands are in his waistband."
Are they spotlighting you?
They're spotlighting, and we're spotlighting, but he's only keeping a partial view. And then when the helicopter would make its way around, you could see one side of him, and there was then a shadow, and then another side. So it was very eerie. Yeah, it was very eerie, and so. Then we could see he's pumping himself up. He knows he's trapped. He knows, I have gone to the end of my end. This is it. I'm either going to kill them or they're going to kill me, and this is where we're going to be in life. And so he makes his run at us. And he's at this point, he's probably 15, 20 feet away, and he pulls his hands out, and still to this day, I couldn't have told you what they were that he pulls out. We know we're missing a gun, and we're thinking he's pulling a gun out. And we fire, ended up shooting and killing him. And then all the folks come from Florida. They're just now getting back on the ground, and they're all like, "Damn it!" They're all like, they wanted to get back at their guy. They're mad. They're mad at what their guy's sitting in ICU on a breathing machine in Texas. That they don't know nothing. They don't know Texas, and so he ends up dying. When medical comes, all the stuff that happens during the shooting, and what he had was he had made booby traps all over where he was staying back in there, and I'm talking like the swing traps, like when Rambo, where
First Blood, yeah,
yeah. And so what he pulled out was 2 spears that he had on him, and he had grinded them down to a point, and so So they'd found the key that he had in his stomach that he went to the bathroom and got out. That they found that, and what he was going and breaking into these houses or breaking into anything he could, boats. He's trying to find food. He did not have a plan on how to get out of here. And what was probably going to happen next? He'd probably go back, divert to his whole ways of, man, I'm going to get in a house and I'll get one of these women.
Opportunity there.
Yeah, because that's what he was before. Yeah. And that, the leopard doesn't change his spot. So, and that's the crime he knows. So they had the schools locked down that whole week. Kids didn't go to school. It was a big deal. And it was a huge deal.
It was 2007-ish, right?
Yeah. And what's crazy is then I get an invitation to the White House. And, and so I got top cop award. Kurt got it too. We both got it. Obama brings us to the White House, and we get to meet. And now President Biden, he did sniff my daughter's hair. That's a weird. That's a weird deal. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but it was a horrible experience. But for the public, it is something that police do, and it's and criminals. You remember, the criminal dictates the situation that we're in. And he dictated that night the situation he was going to put himself in. I mean, he could have easily just laid down and said, I'm done. We were giving him the commands, come out with your hands up, lay on the ground. We gave all that to him. And so was the helicopter who was up there with the mic. So he had the chance, but he chose the chance to do what he did. And that chose his life over ours. Because I'm going to tell you right now, he wasn't coming over there to shake our hands. Yeah, no. Or turn himself in. He wasn't doing that. So
he was one of those few real bad guys.
He was a really bad guy. And then we got the report. The intelligence report came afterwards of his life in Cuba and what he had done for Castro and his military experience. And he was a true badass. I mean, he could have lived on that land. That's what he was doing. And he was setting up for if anybody got near him, the traps would get him before, and at least notify him to get out of there. So they could make a movie on
that one. Yeah.
He's buried in an unmarked grave out there in Grapevine, and they notified the family, and not one person ever showed up to take claim of anything. So it probably tells you another thing
That's weird.
a legacy that he left. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just for the listeners, the unmarked grave, y'all had nothing to do with unmarked grave. Somebody else buried him in the unmarked grave. Okay.
Even
I just want to make assumptions.
No.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's buried in a grave right there. Like we just buried him there. No.
Pile of rocks.
The coroner takes him. They goes and they do all that stuff. But we had found out later that they put him in our grave because no one had ever claimed him. They couldn't do anything with him. So
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a hell. That is like a first blood Rambo.
yeah,
Just a pure evil Rambo.
pure evil person that had done so much damage through his reign of terror over. And it's not. There's still cases out there. And this is when I found out later, because the detective that was working on it, she's like, we have no idea the cases where that truck stopped in different states. So they just know of the cases that happened in Florida, and they know the cases that happened in Nevada. That truck went all over the southern country, and then also to the west. So it's amazing that he used that as a motive to do his reign of terror. So
I am surprised there hasn't been a movie on this guy.
Yeah.
That story. It's seriously.
you may get it out of this podcast.
Maybe hell yeah.
How do we get credit for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, copyright that real quick. Call Joey.
Copyrighted. Somebody can take it now.
It's ours.
It's ours.
I think we know an attorney is too.
Yeah.
Frederick, as society has changed so much, and recent events have caused legislative changes and updates.
Yep.
Would you mind touching on some of those that you've been a part of and you witnessed?
Especially from this past summer, specifically.
It all reigns from, we all go back to the George Floyd incident, which we all thought that the Rodney King incident was something that we had never seen for law enforcement. So on the law enforcement side, and changing society, watch riots and all the things that happened after that. But that didn't go national like the George Floyd incident did. And you take it a little further than that. George Floyd incident went global. You had global disturbances that happened in municipalities all over the world because of one incident. But I'll back it up a little bit on my legislative, kind of stint or whatever you want to call it, abilities. The person that did this job before me was Glenn White. He did it for 34 years. And when he was done, he was done. He was like, do you want the job? I mean, it was like that. And I was sitting in that room behind us down there, and he was sitting there, and he said, do you want to do the legislative work for this organization? And I said, well, who's my competition? And he said, it was me. Then I'm leaving. and so I guess it was I'd shown interest in it, going to the Capitol, going to do our legislative work. And that time we had a smaller agenda, I think, smaller footprint. And I just wanted to make that footprint. I thought we could do a better job. And it was no hit on Glenn, but Glenn was going, he was ending a career, and he was going with what he had to work with. And everything was evolving. And so I changed our PAC. I changed how our political action committee. I put more people on it. I made it more where everyone felt like they had a piece. It's hard to do. It really is hard to do because the time, it's free, change the meetings, how we did them, and especially the interviews on getting people in here and interviewing them. It was a hard interview, and they don't pass it. They don't pass it. That we don't have to endorse. So, and that's what I wanted to instill in everybody. It's like, we do not have to endorse them just because they came down an interview. And if they don't contact us, piss on them. I'm not going to go find them. If they're not smart enough to go find the largest police association in North Texas to interview with, they're not smart enough to run. So that was my mindset. And so we changed that. And then there was another thing when I started doing it at the Capitol is I started a group called TLEC. Texas Law Enforcement Council. Now, I didn't start it solely. There was a group of us that got together: Ray Hunt, Kevin Lawrence, Mitch Landry, Clay Taylor, and that's from DPS. You've got these groups and Kevin's from TMPA, and the whole stint came from one incident. I was in Stephanie Carter's office, who was a freshman Republican out of Dallas, a Harvard grad, and she grabbed me in the hallway and she said, who is in control of all these groups? And I said, what do you mean who's in control? She's like, why do you come in? When you come in, you have an agenda, and then you leave, and then someone else comes in, they have a different agenda.
From the same agency.
Not from a different agency, but in the same bill. Right. And I'm like, who said that? And so she told me these incidents that were happening. So then I asked a couple of chief of staffs there. Amy DeWeese was one of them. I asked her what she was chief of staffs of Ken Sheets at the time, and I was like, holy cow, we are really missing the boat here. We are really missing an opportunity to educate our law enforcement groups on what actually happens here at the Capitol and what happens on an agenda. And so, because remember, they're calendared. So it's when they set their agenda, it's set Monday through however many days they're going to go. So all I did was make a suggestion that we put the groups together and conform a super group, a legislative super group. No pay, there's no dues, there's only thing you do is you come there for an educational piece. Mark Clark was instrumental on this. He did an unbelievable job of helping organize. And so what we did was we found a meeting place. It started with a handful of people at the Capitol. And we would meet, and then we would go over the agenda for the week and what bills looked like we needed to address and what bills we needed to sign up for. Well, the next session I took it over as the chairman, and we did kind of, hey, who wants to be chairman? You elect them, blah, 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 whatever. It's a raise of hands. We incorporated then the constables, the prosecutors, the sheriffs, the cities. And I'm going to tell you, why is the city important there? Because the city sends their own lobby group down there, whether it was a Gary Tittle or folks from Houston. Everybody sends somebody, whatever it is, and that group needs to be sitting in the same room and have the same information. And if there's a conflict, you just go your other way. I'm going to tell you, that group, game wardens are now involved. Every group, Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio, El Paso, you name it, they're in the room. Or what I did like this session, I did Zoom and in person. So if you wanted to come, you could come. If you wanted to watch it on Zoom and you were in Harris County working a case and you wanted to go sit on Zoom for an hour and listen to what the update was, and I would go through Monday through the days of every bill that's law enforcement related, and then we say who's gonna tackle this one? Where are we at with this bill? Putting the prosecutors was the best thing I did in the room because they're all lawyers, and to read a bill is sometimes painful. Especially when they're 140, 50 pages long, and you're like, where are they hiding? Where's all the trash in this? And so we put all that together, and it's like I said, it's not me, it's a collective group, it's a team setting, and it's just a wonderful group of men and women that come together. And the other thing is that we bring in we'll bring in legislators in during that time, and they'll do their pitch, or if it's say AT&T and they want to do a small cell bill, anything they had up they were working on, they could come pitch it to us and tell us why it's good for law enforcement, why it's good for first responders. And the firefighters come when they do, if they're not sleeping. There's usually they're cooking or playing Xbox or whatever. So that takes us back to where the legislative part come. I think a lot of people watched me putting these things together for years, especially the FOP did. They asked me to be on their national program, but before they did that, national legislative team, before they did that, President Trump was in office, and they were getting ready to make this commission for law enforcement, which had not been done for a very, very long time, since like Lyndon B. Johnson, right? So like forever. And so they picked the names went up the list, and they were going to pick 14 commissioners throughout the country. And my name went up with hundreds and hundreds of names. And then it came back down, and my name stayed on it. And I thought, I'll never make it to the third round, the final round. Well, it did. and I ended up being one of the commissioners for President Trump and being on his law enforcement commission, which was unbelievable. But then COVID hit, and so we only got on the ground work done for a month, maybe almost a month and a half, and then we did everything remotely. But what we did is write so much legislation was written in that crime commission that needed to happen. And this is before George Floyd. So we didn't have hell, the gates of hell opening up on law enforcement because we had an idiot that did what he did in Minneapolis. So we wrote this book, and this book's excellent. And all it is a guideline on what needs to change and what has to happen with law enforcement, or what could help law enforcement get down the road. And you'll see bills in there like the defunding was a mechanism that I came up with, where to take the sales tax from cities and put it back into the budget, to the public safety budget, but make that a bill. And if you ever had to, well, guess what? We ended up making that a bill in Texas, one of its first of its kind, and it was all because of Austin. And you have socialists running the city, and so you have they're running the asylum down there, and they took all that money away. That's why their crimes are at the all-time highest right now. I think they're at 78 murders as of this morning. Never been there before. And so we instituted bills like that. We also got rid of the chokehold that should have been gone away. Remember, cities like Dallas and Houston and others have gone away with it. But you still had little dinky towns that were still they were using that as a tool for law enforcement. So we unified that, got away with it. The duty to intervene. It sounds like common sense. You see one of your officers whipping somebody's ass, you should pull them off, right? But if there's no rule that says you have to, then they're not going to do it. So we put that in a bill and passed it. And unification of law enforcement at some point has to happen across this country. And the reason why it has to, because when somebody turns on the TV and they see somebody choking somebody out in St. Paul, and then we all pay for it. And so that comes back to looking at everything that's been happening after the George Floyd incident. And, I worked those riots for 26 days. And I have never seen chaos in the streets like that. And I've heard old heads talk about things. And I would really like to put in you always take those memory pictures of what happens. And you would like to say, man, I'd really like to put that up against somebody else's memory picture of what was happening. But watching downtown burn and watching those mobs go just let loose on our downtown, and we were the only thing from between them than taking over the entire downtown. And people don't understand that. They just think it's a bunch of suburban kids that are out there protesting. That is the biggest line of bullshit that I've ever heard. There was professional protesters in there.
Yeah.
There was
antagonists.
There was folks that were bussed in, flown in. There was ads put in papers for them to come here. They were paid. There was you name it, in those crowds was somebody to do harm. There was armed protesters. There was more chaos going. If it wasn't for our Dallas SWAT teams, and because they were the ones,
and we had some guests. DPS,
yeah, we did have guests. But I'm going to tell you right now who did the work. The Dallas guys. We had right there across from City Hall when I took over that intersection, because it was taken over by the crowd. And I come in, and I'm in my truck, and I'm coming in hot. And I come right through the crowd, and I jump out, and they're like, get him. And I grabbed my AR, and I swung it at that crowd. When I say swung it, I pointed it at everyone in that crowd. I said, come get some. And I moved everybody out of that intersection so the SWAT guys could get through, because they had poured gas all over one of the squad cars that was sitting in the middle of the road right there, and he was trapped. They were both. There's two, male and female, in that car, and they lit it on fire. And nobody talks about those situations.
No, it was peaceful.
It was super peaceful.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but they were burning a squad car with 2 human beings in it. And we had, I think, 8 individual cars got torched during the incidents. But it was chaos, a pure chaos. And the only people that could control that chaos were the law enforcement people out there on the street trying to stop it. And that's where it is. I hope I touched on. I went all over the place on that stuff.
And it's okay. It's one of those things I brought up earlier about all the different hats you got, and we can talk all day long with you. I know Webb talked about his why, the last one, and I know you listened to his deal, and I think I have a good idea about what your whys is, or something you like doing. We're going to transition to the ATO,
yeah,
and the work you've done for that, and then we can get into other things. But I know you took over from Tom Popkin. We just did a show with him. Was good stuff, and he spoke very highly of you, and about how when they made the decision to get you. I want to talk. And I brought up in that one during 7/7, seeing our logo, the ATO logo and DPA logo on the news. That was exposure we never expected to get, but things have changed in there. You were at the head of that. Talk about the growth that you've seen from when you took over and since you've stepped down.
Yeah, you always try to touch something in the league of like a legacy, right? I had this conversation with a group of folks earlier. In high school, I left behind FCA, Fellowship Christian Athletes. I started it in San Antonio, Texas, at our high school. In college, started our fraternity, Fiji, which is still going today. There's still young men going through those programs. Just both of them, they're going. So you get to see them now on social media, and you think about there's a legacy you left behind. ATO is going to be one of those legacies, and not it's Bill Carolla's legacy. I'm just a part of it. I'm lucky that Tom saw the talent there, and I think he really didn't see the talent yet. I think what he saw was like the eagerness, and this guy wants to change things. And the only thing I wanted to change was I wanted to brand us as a household name. All I wanted was to make ATO a household name for law enforcement and the public safety for officers that need help. And I saw what they had, and what they had wasn't good enough for me. And so, that's I'm a busybody person. When I see something that want it the way it is, I want to make it the way I think everybody wants to see it. It's not the way I want it. I just want it to be how everybody wants to see it. And so we rebranded ATO. We had no money. Bill, bless his heart, had done a great job setting up. We had like 4 bank accounts. There were like money laying around everywhere. It was like the old days. Like, go put it in that bank, because if they go out of business, we'll have money in that bank. And so I quickly established a new board, and one of them was to get Steve Brody on there, who was a money man. We needed somebody that knew money. Cops don't know money. I don't care how many cops you talk to. If they say, "Oh, I'm a whiz money," you crazy. I bet he's got an F-250 out there and he's paying $900 a month on it. So it is, every cop's the same way. And Steve is not a cop. He is a cop, but he's a reserve officer, and he's been one for 34 years, but he's a businessman at first. And so we quickly put that into money market and money management to get the money start to work for itself. And we quickly established how many events we would do in a year. Basically, we're going to do X amount of events, and this is our goal on fundraising. Where's our budget line? How much money do we need to make the counseling work? And how much money do we have to make the officers that we're going to have to pay out work? So we figured out there's 2 lines of money. There, counseling, our administrative was so low. I mean, there's a little bit of a rent, but it's not really. And then you've got other things that you got to pay for, is the marketing material, which we do a really tremendous job on getting things. We always use somebody that helps us get it done. And so we did that. We established that. The board gets through it. And the next thing I wanted to do was establish a committee, an advisory committee that would pave the way for who ATO is. And that, because police officers can market to police officers. They can't market to a business community. They're not good at it. So it put businessmen on there like Pete Schinkel, Craig Evans, all the folks that were in the community, that knew the community well. And I also put, at that time, was David Brown. I put him on the advisory board, and this is before all the officers hated him. and so he put his staff, it's like, whatever ATO does, that's what we do. And he goes, we are going to be the go-to department for ATO, and ATO is going to be the go-to for us. And we never had that opportunity. We'd never had somebody that cheerleaded for us like that. And so that opened up a gigantic door for ATO and its ability, especially for its counseling program. And because the cities save money on ATO, and whether they like to say it or not, But still to this day, the fire department for Dallas does not have a counselor on duty. So we are still the counseling program for the fire department. So long story short, raising money, getting to a goal was my point. It was a hard point for me to have all these events, all these money, all this money getting in for these events. So we'd have a rainy day. There was going to be some 9/11 that was something would come for us. And because in law enforcement, every day is, we live in the ashes. And so, of course, that day came on 7/7. And we were the vehicle ready to go. We had already been set up, and CNN and the other Fox, everyone else took hold of, embraced ATO, and so did America, because they wanted to do something. We had got stuff from Australia, New Zealand, you name it. Stuff had come in here, thinking, praying for us, food, money, you name it. But this place was a madhouse. It was something that none of us can control. It was if anyone says that they could have done a better job, I would love for them to work their way through that mud, because not one of us could have done a better job. We did with the job we could do at the time. We took care of the families. We took care of the injured. We still are taking care of those families. We're still taking care of it. I think you had Misty on here the other day, McBride.
Yep.
And I was at the hospital, so I was there. I was sitting dinner when it went down. I got into to Parkland when the car came in with Michael Kroll in it, and what's her name was driving?
Gretchen.
Gretchen was on training, and Mike Smith was with her.
He was trainer because they didn't have any trainers.
And so when I walk into Parkland, and Mike's sitting in the chair right there, and I'm talking to Mike, and he's holding his chest, and I'm like, your wife's on, we had just found out that Heidi was on the way, and I'm like, Heidi's on the way, and they put him on a gurney, and they zipped him away. And I told her that I went in the room and told Heidi that I just talked to Michael, and I go, he's up in surgery, but at that point, all of us thought that he was fine. Yeah. I mean, everyone thought, we knew Michael was dead. We knew Lauren was in surgery. We knew we didn't know the Thompson guy because he was Dart. We knew he was dead. And so that was ground zero for the people, for most of the people was at Parkland. And then, I met Misty, and I met the other officers, and that opened up a place for ATO to try to do more help. And we did a lot of help there with helping those. So you have to look back on these things. A lot of those folks are not officers anymore. That critical incident changed their life. It's changed all of our lives, to be honest with you. But the counseling program, I get thanked about the counseling program. I went to the academy this morning. I had 2 people come up and thank me for the counseling program, and the counseling program has been a godsend, because officers have a confidential counseling program they can go talk to at any time. Most of them have cell phone numbers of all of their therapists right now, and can just text them and say, can I talk? And I know the one of them that's Jennifer Williams that's on there now. I think she changed her last name, but she got divorced. But she is one of those that communicates with them, and it's been a blessing. But if there's ever a legacy that's ever going to be left, my mind is how much money that I've raised for ATO, how much time I put into the program, and I still to this day, I spoke at an event on Monday, or Monday. Today's Thursday, and I can't put my days together. But on Monday, I spoke at an event, and I went through the numbers. I like to go through the numbers because numbers don't lie. It's like baseball, they don't lie. You can tell what we do by our numbers, and our numbers have to hit a certain mark to take care of all these people. And I know that just through our services last year, for all the agencies that we touched, was $194,000. So that's not our counseling. That's just for helping officers throughout the state of Texas. And we weren't built to help the officers out of the state of Texas. We were built to help Dallas officers, but we have become bigger than that. And so we have become that's the legacy that we're going to leave behind. And it's really Bill's legacy. I'm a part of it.
Well, you've definitely grown it. Tell people, we talked a lot about counseling, and that came a little bit later. The confidential counseling came a little bit later. Originally, it really was just to fill the gap. Officer got hurt on duty, needed a little extra cash, or they had an incident at home, maybe a fire or something, and really that's how it started. But it turned into counsel. But kind of explain what else it does.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, because I do that when I go speak. So what is ATO, Assist the Officer Foundation? It's a 501c3 that started in 1999, and it was all built for David Rodriguez. David Rodriguez was shot in a critical incident that in a buy bust and paralyzed him. And so the city and cities at that time, when you ran out of your time, you were let go. You were fired. They may give you a plaque and tell you, "Hey, have a nice life," but you were not part of that city anymore. You were not part of that department. You were gone. And so that was all happening for David, where he was about to be released and released to doing his job and being paralyzed. And so we were trying to figure out a funding mechanism to come up with, and Bill is the one who came up with it. I can't take credit for this. I know Tom can't take credit for it, but Bill can take credit for it, and then we help fix. We just made the design better. The wheel always starts somewhere, and whether it gets faster and lighter is up to the people you put around you. And so we designed it better and faster just because the things grow at that time, and you get people on the board and whatnot. So we built it for David so he could have some type of financial, any finances. But then it became where we'll do it. It wasn't just built for David. I shouldn't say that. It was built because of him.
It was an inspiration.
It was an inspiration, but and like he would say, and no one wants to say it, when you're sitting in a wheelchair and you're the picture on the flyer, he'd be like, "Well, I'm the poster boy for all ATO," and I know David would appreciate me saying that, because that's what he would say, because of him and his wheelchair. So did that, but it's for when an officer has an injury, off duty or on duty. Our officers get injured all the time, whether they broke their arm in a fight or broke their arm getting beat up by somebody, or car crash, lightning strikes and hits their house and burns it to the ground. They need a place to go for a few nights. Sick kid. Tornadoes. We did, when the tornadoes came through here, that was Christmas, after Christmas. It was, I can't remember what, something like that, when it went through Rockwall and Rowlett, mostly Rowlett.
16.
2016. We were on the ground. We were in this room first, because I held a meeting here, and I said, we need to get out there and get assistance checks. We had, oh my God. We started with like 33 officers. That's one of the heaviest areas we have law enforcement lives in the Metroplex. And we went out to their houses, and we were standing in the pouring rain, handing out checks. And at that time, we did the first check for $1,000. And we did $1,000 check for every person. Their house was gone. Their houses were gone. The pictures are devastating. This is an F4 that went through. They say at some points it got to F5. This thing was the finger of God. It went through and it tore everything out. And so we got those checks out, got them to hotels, got them to where they needed to go. And then we couldn't believe it. The public turns around and pours into ATO. And so we go back and we give another set of checks, and then we catch up with the people that we missed. Because these folks were out of their homes for over a year, because most of their homes had to be rebuilt, and they just relocated, to be honest with you. And you had insurance that wasn't stepping up. You had insurance that was crappy. And you had insurance that just was, well, we'll just wait and see what happens with all this. And so a lot of these officers were just SOL when it came to their homes until the insurance figures it out. And so we were that stopgap between that, and ATO was the big shoe that went out there and took care of everything. So that's
if people listening right now wanted to give to ATO, where do they go?
Oh, if you wanted to, atodallas.org, and if you ever wanted to look at it, atodallas.org is our funding mechanism choice. And we've got the donate, you go on there and you donate, and you can put, for whatever reason you want to put it in there. You can put it for, just the general fund. You can put it for, if you've got an officer that you've loved or he works in your neighborhood, and you just like, Chris Webb, I love the guy, and he told me about this fund. It leaves us a note to where it came from. And we like to send that note back telling them thank you. But that's our charitable choice of line item. Now, how do we get it in there? And you got to remember this though. I've always loved to jab this because there's a lot of these. I want to say a different word about these different the scam artists. I'm sorry, the foundations that are out there that are law enforcement related scammers. I said it again. Sorry, it slips. So
It happens.
We don't have anybody on our board that gets a paycheck. There's not one. It's always been a volunteer. Our office staff volunteer. Everything that we have is volunteer. Dallas Morning News did a write-up and compared us with all the charities that were in our region. We came out with almost, I think it was 96 or 97% that we give back for every dollar. And we came out as the number one foundation in law enforcement in the state of Texas. And the reason why that it's set up that way and then why they did it, we were asked to be investigated by one of the scam artists. And so when we were asked, I said, you can stay here as long as you want and look through all of our books. And when they came out of here, they could not believe it, that they were looking at something that was true and organic. And that's the way ATO started, and that's the way it will end at some point, that it was organic. So it's all run because people love it.
Well, I like one of the things that we always sell. You send a check. What Chris Webb needs help. That $100, if you send a check for $100, he's getting every cent of that. We're not taking any administrative fees.
Yeah.
No. Sometimes we'll eat the credit card fees.
We do that all the time.
Yeah,
we ate all the credit card fees during the 7/7 stuff. People don't know that. We I think it was over $300,000. So you got to think of the fees alone. We eat a lot of fees, and folks have no idea how much that is because no one else will do that. They'll say that's a bad business decision, and we'll say, well, you know what? We'll make it up some other way because somebody will donate, and they'll say put it in your general fund and use it for operational expenses.
Frederick, I think you're probably the busiest man in law enforcement, and that's no joke. I mean, you could very easily do your 8 hours with DPT/marshals and go home and go just enjoy the fruits of your labor, right? Nobody would ever talk bad about you, but you don't. You don't stop there. You're here at the DPA. You don't stop there. You're with PAC. You're in Austin. You give up a lot of time. That wasn't enough for you, so you got on the McKinney City Council, right? And we'll talk about something you're doing next, and we'll get into that in just a second. But I want to know, and Randy talked about your why on ATO and legacies, but what drives you to serve? I know it comes from a place of serving others, but what is it that drives you and motivates you? Because I'm telling you, just following his social media will exhaust you and think, God, I'm wasting so much of my time watching because I see what drives you to keep pushing in these service functions?
I get that question a lot, and yeah, my social media is probably exhausting.
That's why I dressed up as your social media for Halloween.
That's
and
why
this was
Randy,
several years ago. It's not even what it is
You might
now.
have to do that again, Randy. I mean, that was that's a costume that keeps on giving, and it evolves.
Yeah.
And so I do sit on city council for McKinney. I ran that race 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. I ran against three other gentlemen, and I'm the first serving law enforcement person on city council since they started city council, and the city started in 1848. And so it has been an absolute dream to be on there. First of all, running a campaign is no dream. There's nothing, when people say just have fun, because there's nothing fun about a campaign other than when somebody tells you they're going to endorse you and you're the guy, right? And that's when it's fun. But other than that, it's a ton of work, and it's a ton of time, and it's a ton of your family's time. My family ran the last campaign with me, and Tracy, my wife, my unbelievable wife, campaign manager, and she's taking on the role again. And so what we're doing now is I'm running for state rep in McKinney. It's a position I'll never see in my lifetime in my position that I'm in. It's another piece that I want to leave a legacy for, and this one's for my family. You always get choked up when you try to do these things, and the one thing is, I don't come from anything. I don't have that legacy in my life and my family. I don't have something that I look back and say that was awesome that they did that, other than being born. I want to leave something on the ground, and I want to leave something that when people say, he did it, he went and did it. And so this is that next step that I can go do it, and I can do it good, and I can do it with some common sense. I can do it to where we're not fighting the Republicans versus the Democrats, and I can't talk to him, he can't talk to him, he can't talk to her, he can't talk to her. I am so sick of that. And I think so many people are so sick of that. Now, I am a Republican. If you look at my voting record, I'm a hard Republican. And that's how I'm very conservative. But there's certain parts of where I hear folks, and they're so damning. They're like, they say things that are just so disgusting to other Republicans that just makes me want to think, why do they get in this area of trying to hurt people? And that's just not who I am. I'm going to run a clean race, and it's going to be run with dignity, and it's going to run with a lot of endorsements, and it's going to run with a lot of folks getting behind me. We had the kickoff the other night. We had over 200 plus people there. I was not expecting that. And it's these campaigns grow. And what I wanted, and people say, well, why are you running? And everyone always thinks, oh, people are running because they want to be this person or that person. I don't want to be that person. I don't give a damn about a steak dinner. I don't care about going on a trip. I don't care about that. If anybody knows me, they know I'd rather just be with my family. But I can't take what's going on right now. I cannot take sitting there watching these parties devour each other and not step in and try to make a change. And I know that if I step in there and I can make the change and work with everybody and make us a better place, then others will follow that same example. And when they follow that example, we will be in a better place. And that's why I'm running. And so hopefully it'll rub off, and God willing, I'll win this race. And I'll tell you this, no one's going to outwork me. I've shown that in every race I've run. They're just not going to outwork me. I'm going to work my tail off and leave something. And then there's another thing I've got to run for. There's not another law enforcement officer in the House. There's not another officer that's sitting in the House right now. I'd be the only one. So this is not just for me. This is for everybody that wears that uniform, whether you're a police or fire. This is for everyone that puts those boots on in the morning and gets up and goes, going to work, going to work an extra job. These crappy politicians never do anything for us. Well, that will change because I'll have that door wide open, and it won't be one vote just because I got in. Trust me, I'm going to get other ones to follow my lead, and the other people will do exactly what we need to get done to make this place a better place.
I think one of the things, watching you over the years grow and the thing you did, and I think a lot of people don't realize what you do. In Dallas County, city of Dallas, pretty predominantly Democrat, and you've worked with both sides of the aisle getting police bills passed down there, that you wouldn't do with from Royce West to, any of these other guys that are down there. So I haven't heard you really mention that much, but I know that it can be done because I've seen you do it for police, involved bills to help protect your coworkers.
And I'll give you that. That's a great bill. Now, the defunding bill this last session was a benchmark bill, but also the vest bill was a benchmark bill, and that was another one of the governor's priority bill. I put all that bill together, and Dan Patrick, our lieutenant governor, he gave it to Royce West, and he said, "You work with Frederick to get this bill done," and we did, and we Kelvin and everyone else, we put that bill together, and what that bill did was it actually allowed cities to get the grant money from the state, and the state would basically, that money would come out, and then you would basically, if the city didn't have the money to get vest, and I'm not talking about a regular vest, I'm talking level 3 vest. Level 3 vest stops a round, a high velocity round from a rifle. That's what killed all of our officers during 7/7. I wanted to change that to where they didn't have to get the big vest out. All they needed was the plate inside of it. And so we wrote the bill, we got the bill passed, it became a priority bill, and that's a legacy bill. When you sit down and you go through all the bills you've done, that one or tuition reimbursement that I did this last session as another legacy bill, it became a priority bill for the governor. This defunding bill became a priority bill for the governor. And you have all these ideas in your mind of how to fix things and how to make them work, but somebody's got to give you the chance. And I keep giving these bills to make everyone look good. and then the other thing is I keep picking jobs that don't pay crap, and so this job doesn't pay anything either. So it's like Frederick's really good at fixing things and not getting paid.
Certain people are wired for certain things, and everybody in this room right now is wired for law enforcement. We know how to go out and work the street. I'm not wired to go do what you do. I'm too naive and too trusting of people. I think you have a good way of reading people. You see things. You can see things down the road. You can say, "Wait, what are they actually trying to do?" You got good discernment. I think you're perfectly wired for this position because you've been in Austin so long. It's not confusing to you. You know how it works, and I think it would be a big benefit for all law enforcement, all first responders, to have somebody that truly does understand our job. That will always stand with us. So there's my ringing endorsement, although I don't live in that district.
Frederick, can you give the listeners information about where to go look at your information for your campaign, please?
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah,
and
try to fit that in.
Yeah, try to fit it in, and you also could donate. So these races aren't cheap, and but if you are listening and you're wondering who am I, what am I, and what am I about, my splash page is up, which is turning into a web page. But it's at frazierfortexas.com, and that's Frazier, Frazier, for Texas, TEXAS.com. And if you go there, you can see that's a little bit history about me and who I am. And these races are expensive. They get up to $1 million for these races because it's an open seat, and we're doing it. We're doing it the old way. We're doing it organically with my family. Like I said, Tracy is my campaign manager. My treasurer is an old mayor of ours, that is Mayor Lockmiller, a great guy, and I've got a ton of support already. We're just moving this campaign along as they're supposed to move along.
Frazier's easier to spell than Frederick.
Yeah.
An extra E.
Frazier. Yeah. When you were sitting there talking about, as in politics, of coming to a common ground, but Republican, Democrat, and right now there's just so much just animosity on both sides. It's really who can sling the most shit and get somebody else the dirtiest.
Yeah, and that's where we've gone, and I've had this conversation twice today, and that's where we've gone. If everyone's like, who would you idolize if you was a president that was out there? I said Ronald Reagan. Right off, that's right off the bat.
He's seen both sides.
He's seen both sides, but the biggest thing is the conservative values that go through my blood are the same type of values, and especially when it goes through public safety, education, transportation. All those things have to happen. I'll give you an example, like our border right now. Our border is an absolute mess. I spoke on it yesterday morning, and it's a mess because of who's in the office. It's not. That's the only mess it's in is because of who's in office. And I know that there's a right way to do it, and then there was like, well, you can't just put those kids in concentration camps or detention camps. We can't, but we have to do something better than that. And there's a way to fix that and find a way in the middle, but we can't leave the border wide open. And that's what's happening right now. I'll give you an example. In September, we had 250,000 cross. So that's Texas
in a pandemic.
In a pandemic. There's no pandemic down there,
right?
And so, but those are issues that are
affecting Texas.
They affect
Texas issues that people outside of Texas are making policy on, leaving us out of the conversation.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I mean, our current president, as I know right now, still has not visited there.
He drove through on it.
Oh yeah, that's right. He did drove up. So, but you have issues like that drive me crazy. And not one man can fix that. It has to take everybody. It has to be taking everybody, putting them together as a team, putting them together to see both sides of it, because it doesn't affect just Republicans. It affects Democrats as well. And that's where that divide is right now in our country, and that needs to be fixed.
Fred, I got one final question.
Yep.
Go ahead and wrap this baby up. What's next for Fred Frazier?
Hey, there's nothing next for Frederick Frazier. Right now, I got to get elected to the state house. That's the only thing next.
You're going to get elected.
Yeah. So I've got.
What is your vision moving beyond?
My vision is getting this election past us, winning and getting past, and then trying to do great things for the state of Texas, but incorporate them for not just for McKinney, but for everybody. And you obviously have to take care of the district that you win, but McKinney is a special place. Folks that live there and are going to be listening, McKinney is so awesome to where the we still wave at each other, and we still doors are unlocked. That it's one of those places where America has like they forgot about it. We still have the hot air balloons that fly every morning when it's not windy. Today would have been a hell of a day to fly a hot air balloon, but it's one of those special places in Collin County that the time is a little bit forgotten. We're still back in the good old days. But what do I have? What's left me is to try to bring some of that back to America. Try to bring some of that back to Texas. Some of Collin County needs to come back to all parts of Texas to understand that we can still wave at each other. We can still live next door to anybody. We can still have some of the lowest crime. All those things that are incorporated in McKinney can happen everywhere. We just got to work together on it.
Well put, and a perfect way to wrap it up, man. I wish you all the luck. We're going to be here supporting you all the way. And go to atodallas.org, and then also look up Frederick Frazier.
No, Frazier for Texas.
Frazier for Texas.
Yeah. .com.
That's it. Thank you so much.
Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Down when you're lonely, I'll pull you up. Life leaves you heavy when the going gets tough. I'll be your shoulder, together we'll run. Up from the bottom, yeah, we'll rise above. Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far, for the gold and the blue, I'll never give up on you.